Sharing startup WeWork has announced that it will lay off 2,400 employees, with close to half of the fifth of its global workforce,
WeWork, along with its charismatic founder and former CEO Adam Neumann. The company was one of the hottest startups in history. Then it plunged from nearly $50 billion in value to basically worthless in just 6 weeks.
We've studied the most money-losing companies that have gone public, the most that have lost money 12 months before they've done their IPOs. WeWork's the second most money-losing IPO after Uber.
Remember this guy? Adam Neumann, the charismatic founder of WeWork? The guy that hyped WeWork into a $47 billion unicorn startup and then to near bankruptcy in just 6 weeks? Who became a billionaire in the process by getting paid $1.7 billion just to leave the company?
He is like, and that's a guy who knows he built a sinking ship on bull. So he's trying to get all his money out, and then
he pulled $700 million the day they were supposed to go public.
Right.
He was just
then they paid him not to work, basically, to resign, and he got that. Like they paid him a premium on his shares to get him to go away.
Yeah, that guy is back, and he's coming back with a vengeance. He's got a new startup he wants you to buy into called Flow. And guess what? This disgraced founder already got $350 million thrown at him for this new startup, making his new company already worth $1 billion, even though they have zero working product yet. Now on the outside, this may seem unfair. Adam Neumann did some really unethical stuff at WeWork. He hyped up the valuation. He ran WeWork like a cult, with him as the charismatic cult leader, while doing sketchy things like trademarking the word "we" in his name and then selling it back to the company for $6 million, while pocketing hundreds of millions of dollars in consulting fees that he offered to WeWork investors on the down low. So why should this guy get a second chance? Why should this guy get $350 million thrown at him when the average person can barely even get a raise? Because the reality is, this is exactly how Silicon Valley works. If you're a venture capitalist, who are you gonna invest in? A brand new 18-year-old founder who has zero experience? Or Adam Neumann, who understands how the game works, who understands that in order to make money in the startup world, in order to IPO and go public, you have to be really good at hyping up something from nothing. A co-working company? No! This is a revolutionary tech company that's building the future of work. A boring residential real estate company? No! This is Flow, a revolutionary real estate startup that's gonna change the way we live forever. Flow is gonna bring us to utopia. Adam Neumann is gonna bring us to utopia. But will he? This is Adam Neumann's second act. Adam Neumann and his investors may be ready to dive into Flow, but they first have to deal with the horrible market we're in right now, where everyone is afraid of a recession. And that's after the stock market just wrapped up its worst year since the 2008 crisis. But despite the bloodshed in the markets, our longtime partner Masterworks, the art investing platform, has been helping investors just like you see real results, paying out tens of millions of dollars in total in 2022 alone. Not to faceless investors, mind you, but to viewers just like you. But if you missed out, it's not too late. Masterworks has pulled off 3 sales just in the last 60 days alone, which returned 10, 13, and 35% nets. Yes, you heard that right, 35% returns. Try finding that level of performance anywhere else. It's no wonder why outlets like CNBC are raving about Masterworks. And as a Jake Tran viewer, if you're ready to invest anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 right now, pause the video, scroll down, and click the link below to skip the waitlist now. Pause the video and click the link below now. Thanks to Masterworks for sponsoring this video. After the WeWork fallout, Adam Neumann and his family kinda fell into obscurity. Most people assumed that they went back to Israel, where they're originally from. People heard that they were selling some of their properties in the Hamptons. But remember, Adam Neumann got $1.7 billion from leaving WeWork. And a guy that's neurotic as Neumann isn't just gonna retire and sit on the beach. No. So while he waited for the heat to die down on him, while he waited for the public to stop wanting to lynch him, he was making big moves in the background, and he was pouring a lot of that money into real estate. By 2022, Adam and his wife had bought up over $90 million worth of residential real estate all around America. They were buying up entire apartment blocks, and they were doing all of this on the down low. On the outside, it looked like this WeWork guy was just investing in residential real estate as any billionaire would do. No one thought for a second that a guy with as bad of a reputation as Adam would ever try to get into the startup world again. But behind closed doors, that was exactly what he was preparing for. Adam Neumann was preparing for something big. He was preparing for his comeback.
People are wondering why he's able to raise money. And what I always tell founders is when you see these like weird fundings and you can't get your heads around them, it typically has to do with track record, and credible audacity trumps prior blunders. So say what you will about Adam Neumann, he is audacious and he has credibility. People forget his origin story. They only
Mid-2020. It was less than a year after Adam's downfall, and yet, he was already secretly back on the startup scene. But instead of playing the role of the charismatic founder, this time he played the role of the charismatic tech investor. And he became one of the main investors in a startup called Alfred. Basically, Alfred was like a delivery app for apartment tenants, but instead of ordering food, you could order concierge services, like laundry, groceries, pet care, and cleaning. Marcella Sapone and Jessica Beck co-founded Alfred while at Harvard Business School back in 2014. At first, Alfred was nothing more than a way to easily order services that most renters needed for their apartments. But as the company grew, Marcella and Jessica saw the potential. In 2019, they bought out Bixby, a rental building management company, which meant they had officially entered the big leagues. Now, they weren't just offering concierge services to renters, but they were also offering property management services to landlords. And that's when Adam Neumann jumped at the opportunity to get in on the disruption of residential real estates. In 2020, he invested $30 million into Alfred and became the company's biggest shareholder. And sure, the move may have made people scratch their heads a bit. Adam Neumann was always the kind of guy to start new businesses, not invest in them. But for almost 2 years, it seemed like he had maybe accepted his new place in the world. Maybe Adam had really changed. But of course, none of that was true. Somewhere along the line, Adam sat back, he looked at Alfred's business model, and thought, hey, why don't I do this myself? Alfred had just the right amount of innovation and disruption for Adam's taste. He could just imagine the possibilities. Tech entrepreneur makes waves in residential real estate. The future of work? No, this was the future of living. Yes, he could see it now. If he could take the idea behind Alfred, but do it at a much bigger scale, while using all the tricks and lessons he learned from WeWork, this really could be his second coming. Adam already had a lot of properties in his investment portfolio, so if he went into this, he wouldn't have to work with landlords like Alfred did, but instead he would be the landlord himself. It was perfect. All he had to do was borrow Alfred's business model, switch up a few core strategies, and he would be sitting on a gold mine. So in 2021, Adam bought up Carson Living, one of Alfred's biggest competitors. If he was gonna make the idea behind Alfred his own, he would need someone with the know-how to make it happen. And who better than the founder of Alfred's main competitor? From there, he needed more apartments. So Adam started quietly buying up more than $1 billion worth of apartments, with most of those purchases happening all within the last year. Quote, entities tied to Mr. Neumann have been quietly acquiring majority stakes in more than 4,000 apartments, valued at more than $1 billion in Miami, Atlanta, Nashville, Fort Lauderdale, and other US cities. And once every last piece of his plan had fallen into place, Adam revealed his newest brainchild to the world, Flow. Adam's secretive new startup that is probably going to be WeWork, but for apartments instead of offices. Flow has no working product right now, and they're keeping everything under wraps. And yet, Adam Neumann's new startup is already worth $1 billion. In August 2022, Andreessen Horowitz, or A16Z, one of the biggest venture capital firms out there, posted this article, Investing in Flow. Quote, our nation has a housing crisis. Our country is creating households faster than we're building houses. Structural shortages in available homes for sale push housing prices higher, while young people are staying single for longer and increasingly concentrating in highly desirable urban centers. These factors put enormous pressure on rents in the nation's most dynamic cities, starkly revealing the troubling realities of both sides of the housing market's two historical models. The first model is you own a home you call your own, typically with a multi-decade mortgage near your employer, if you can find a house, as these locations aren't often building new housing, if you can afford the house, as housing prices in many such places have skyrocketed. And even then you're now stuck. You can't move, even if your economic opportunity or life path wants to take you somewhere else. The second model is you rent an apartment, but renting an apartment is a soulless experience. Do you even meet your neighbors, much less have any friends in your complex? Does it feel like home or just a place to sleep? Are you proud to bring your friends and family to visit or hesitant? And you end up paying rent for decades and still own zero equity, nothing. Apartments don't create any bond between person and place, and without a community, it also doesn't create a bond between person to person. Now drop the impact of the post-COVID world into this, where many people are now working remotely without much face-to-face interaction, and you're left with a lot of problems in today's residential real estate. The residential real estate world needs to address these changing dynamics, and yet virtually no aspect of the modern housing market is ready for these changes, which is why we're excited to partner with Adam Newman and his colleagues on Flow, which is a direct strike on precisely this problem. Adam is a visionary leader who revolutionized the second largest asset class in the world, commercial real estate, by bringing community and brand to an industry in which neither existed before. Adam and the story of WeWork have been exhaustively chronicalized, analyzed, and fictionalized, sometimes accurately, and for all the energy put into covering the story, it's often underappreciated that only one person has fundamentally redesigned the office experience and led a paradigm-changing global company in the process, Adam Newman. We think it is natural that for his first venture since WeWork, Adam returns to the theme of connecting people through transforming their physical spaces and building communities where people spend the most time, their homes. Residential real estate, the world's largest asset class, is ready for exactly this change. Shelter is one of our most basic needs. In a world where limited access to home ownership continues to be a driving force between inequality and anxiety, giving renters a sense of security, community, and genuine ownership has a transformative power for our society. Make no mistake, this kind of mission is a heavy lift. We are thrilled by the scope and aspiration of this project. It is not lacking in vision or ambition, but only projects with such lofty goals have a chance at changing the world." End quote. And when you put it like that, it starts to sound pretty appealing. Man, maybe this will change the world. You start to see why A16Z dumped $350 million into this bet, the biggest single bet they've ever made, which makes Flow worth over $1 billion before it even launched.
I think it's a real positive for Andreessen. It's like, look,
Yeah, I do.
You know, you just raised a ton of money. I think their business model works by taking as much oxygen in the room as possible, which means to be actively fundraising always. It's true of Blackstone, it's true of Apollo, it's true of Carlyle, it's true of KKR. Any of these publicly traded investment managers, they live and die by their ability to constantly be raising funds, which implicitly means you have to constantly be writing funds.
But then again, this is exactly what founders and venture capitalists are best at. They need to sell you on how this is the future. They need to paint a picture of utopia because that's how they make money. Even if the majority of these startups' business models fundamentally will never work, to this day WeWork still does not make a single cent, none of that matters. Because if by the time the startup does crash and burn, the VCs would have already collected their management fee, and founders like Adam Newman are able to cash out in other ways, like his $1.7 billion severance.
Andreessen wins by showing that Adam Newman goes and picks him. Andreessen wins because they have the ability to write a $350 million check. Andreessen wins because they have $350 million less that they have to actually put into the hands of other entrepreneurs. Now they can do it with just one check. So it's a multifaceted win for them. And it's a multifaceted win for Newman.
And that is what most people don't understand about Adam Newman. Adam Newman is not some evil frauster that the world should hate. All he did was realize how the game is played and decided to be the best player out there. Before the world of venture capitalists and modern-day bankers, there was one banking family that ruled them all, the Rothschilds. And the actual story behind the Rothschilds is insane. Born in an old Jewish ghetto, the Rothschilds would rise to become the world's first international bank, lending money to kings, governments, and nobility. They were notorious for funding both sides of wars to ensure that they would always profit, leading one economist at the time to say, quote, "There is but one power in Europe, and that is Rothschild," end quotes. But the problem is, the Rothschilds are extremely secretive to this day, which has led them to be shrouded in conspiracy theories. It's hard to tell what's real and not. But I wanted to set out to find out the truth about the Rothschilds. Because like them or hate them, there's gotta be something you can learn from the world's most powerful banking dynasty. And I put all this research into our new private documentary on the Rothschilds that you can watch right now by clicking the card on the screen. Click the card on the screen to watch now.